Not every day, but like also. Yeah.
It's not to be every day, it should be every other day. Like, it doesn't-
Yeah, so I'm like, to do my personal projects. Yes. But. I didn't go okay. I did my poster draft.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think. Draft to do.
Day, I think it is.
Early. Yeah. It wasn't fun. You could just have it. But I didn't know my
Right. Let's go ahead and get started. First, I'd like to welcome our Zoom participants. And I've been doing this in my other classes. Will somebody, let's pick on someone. Sarah, can you join us to calibrate the volume on our speakers?
Yeah, I can hear you good.
Okay, can you say a couple sentences so we can get the volume right?
Yes, I can do that. Glad to be here today in class. And today's Monday.
It is. What comes tomorrow?
Ready to go for the week. Tomorrow's Tuesday.
Tomorrow's Tuesday. Excellent. Good. All right. I think you got it. Thank you. So today's week, we're going to have a presentation here in a couple minutes from a couple of guest speakers to talk about safety. And this was a topic that we didn't cover in last year's class, and it became obvious that was a necessary thing to do, given that most of the students' projects were focused on safety issues. So when we presented the topic of the class at the APA conference last fall, that's safety, gotta have something on safety. So, sure. Okay. So we'll go to the presentations here in a couple minutes, and we'll break again just before 7 o'clock. And after break, we'll break up into the groups that we had last week. And thank you to those who have emailed me back to make corrections on the group memberships. Last week it was just a little chaotic for me because we were trying to get things set up on Zoom and with the breakout groups and everything, and it was a big challenge. But we did it, and I tried to keep good records, and I slipped in a couple places. So we'll break up into groups. Last time we had 5 groups in this room and 3 groups in that room. And it's interesting that I chose that because the square footage over there is probably 3 times the size of this one. So I'm thinking this today that we might flip that around and maybe put 4 or 5 over there and about 3 in this room, make it a little easier to talk. Last time we had a little bit of a challenge making sure that every group had a laptop. So that'll be something I'll want to check on before we start off in the second hour. All right. So I think we're getting ready to get started. Our guests tonight are Carrie Silcox and Gina Espinoza-Salcedo. And Carrie is the executive director of the Highway Patrol. She gets called that all the time. She is the director of the Utah Office of Safety. They work with the Highway Patrol. They work with UDOT, but they are not either of those things. And she's been with the office for a number of years. Been working in the state for 33 years, and a variety of topics or fields related to safety, transport safety, but not just vehicle safety. Like she's going to talk about, although the name of her office has the word highway in it, the office is much more broad than that and looking at safety issues. Gina's also been with her agency for a while. She's been with the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration, which is one of the main administrations in the U.S. Department of Transportation. NHTSA is its acronym that people know it by. She's been there for about 23 years. She comes from a public health background, which I found fascinating. I just reading her bio, I was like, oh, wow. Has done a lot in public health. That's her master's degree is in public health. And so she comes to the issue of safety as a public health issue. I think it's really, of course it is, but I don't know that we often think of it that way. So Gina is the administrator for Region 8 for NHTSA. So she's kind of a ranking person in the agency. We're really pleased. Folks, Gina and Harry, and they're going to share the time and have some discussion. Take it away.
Yeah. Hey, good evening. Thanks so much. So thank you so much for the warm welcome and for having me. I flew from Denver this morning and I'm on flight this evening. So I'm glad I could be here in person because honestly, much prefer seeing everyone and getting a chance to hear your interest in safety and whatever last with you. And thank you, sir, for introducing me. And I'm thrilled to be here with Gary tonight. We have worked together for a very long time in the world of safety, especially here in Utah. And Utah is one of the 6 states that we serve. So I'm based in Denver, but we service all of the mountain states and the Dakotas and Wyoming. And so it's been a wonderful career to see kind of how transportation has changed in a number of years. And as you said, safety is at the heart of element, especially for us. So today I'll be presenting with Carrie, and we're going to talk a little bit about the role of safety within the Department of Transportation, but specifically for me and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and kind of the way our work is as a topic that varies our quality of life. Where we live in moving some form of fashion for entire life. Very unique way that some of the other public health issues don't fight. Now you're 3 weeks into the program, I understand, and I can pull up the presentation here in mind. Your system. But it's no surprise if and I'm starting to change the way I talk about traffic safety and highway safety, because really we're talking about road safety. Sometimes the jargon that you used historically, it's a little bit antiquated. So I'm even starting to shift the way I talk about the work that we do every day so much. And
Reading the chat there, our microphone is that thing that looks like it's from a sci-fi movie.
I'll try to angle it a little bit, see if that changes the quality.
So I'll kick it off by saying that roadway deaths and injuries are really no surprise, and that this is the public health crisis that we're all facing. And even though the traffic fatalities over the last 30 years, the progress that we're making has stalled, and the fatalities and fatality rates have started to climb again. And that's very much the case here in all of our Western states. But this is just a quick glance at some of the numbers, which I'm sure you're seeing in fashion. And Carrie's going to go into this a little bit more specific to Utah. But I think that what this does, at least for me, is it really drives home that we need to design and offer and continually improve our options for safer mobility, and to start to incentivize safe healthcare transportation. Because we're looking at these numbers largely because of vehicles. And as you're thinking about alternate forms of transportation or primary forms of transportation, what does that look like now in terms of safe transportation and mobility options for everyone? To change the way we think about it, and then to change the way that people are thinking about transportation, and ultimately how they're acting on it, how people, all of us, are starting to think about safer modes of transportation. I think it's an exciting time in roadway safety. Some of you may have heard about the bilateral infrastructure law, and that was just recently passed, but it's a 50% increase in the number of resources that we now have. And so to me, collectively, I think this is an incredible opportunity to do creative things and innovative things with transportation. For basically filling the fundamental need to do so. You never had a better time, resources that are devoted to this kind of innovation. So it's very well resourced for all your creative ideas when it comes to how we're going to change the way we can see the mobility here at state. You mentioned that my lens of this is really from a public health perspective. And I think there are 5 primary pathways to which transportation can impact all of these areas. We're obviously committed to promoting better health outcomes at the Department of Transportation, which is not something we've always mentioned. But we recognize that transportation influences public health through 5 primary pathways. Obviously, we're promoting safety. We're going to be able to improve air quality. We can respect the natural environment through public health and transportation, but we can really improve the social equity and to improve access to jobs and healthcare and to community services and to create opportunities for the positive effects of biking and walking and cycling and any sort of ride sharing. Thank you. Okay. I just wanted to mention traffic safety culture, because traffic safety culture is really kind of the way we're shifting our thought around transportation safety and culture as kind of looking at better health outcomes, but also studying culture within our transportation agendas and organizations and kind of the power to transform what's happening as we design and maintain our surface transportation mode. So all behaviors, whether we're walking or rolling or riding or cycling, they're socially influenced by the groups to which we belong. And as social beings, we're naturally motivated to behave in a way that's consistent with groups in which we associate and the ones that we grew up in. So I think unveiling the values and thinking of the culture that we have, whether it's people with whom we live or where we work, or even just the state, your town, cities, the state that we're in. I think this is a massive shift and a way we can think about that personal influence and the personal responsibility we have in the culture that we're trying to influence for a safe driving culture or safe walking culture, which ultimately is a bold contrast to the traditional that we build our communities. Has anyone heard about the safe system approach?
People were required to read about it. It was assigned homework.
Fantastic. Well, then I will move through this pretty quickly. But safe system approaches is kind of new to us at NHTSA, and it's new within the department because this is the first time Undersecretary that we have announced this as our national strategy. We're actually moving towards a mode, a philosophy and a strategy that's been adopted by countries all over the world. So the roadway safety strategy on a national level is going to be our approach that we're taking. And as you know, 5 objectives: safer people, safer vehicles, safer roads, safer post-crash care, and safer speed. I will mention just a few things about each. I won't go into all of the details here for each section, but there were a few. Are we on? So safer people, I'm just going to have some more. NHTSA and all of our state partners, like Carrie, we're all responsible for the safe behavior compliance of road users, which is different than our federal highways or federal transit partners. And we're kind of growing our preventive education resources and training, and that's all going to be reinforced with positive consumer information. Some of the messages that you're going to be seeing out of the Utah Highway Safety Office and some of our other multimodal partners to give the best information about information and consequences, facts that people want, so that they know what the consequences of risky behaviors are. But that's the safe people focus of it. And when it comes to safe vehicles, they just catch up too. On the safe vehicles front, a lot of people don't realize that NHTSA is also responsible for safe vehicles, the 5-star crash testing, the crash worthiness, the crash test dummies, the recalls, the tires, the airbags, NHTSA is also responsible for safer vehicles. And in this area, I mentioned crash worthiness because I think we're also diverting a number of resources to vulnerable road users outside the vehicle. What does that mean with these larger cars and the SUVs? And how risky are we making it for the people outside of the vehicle when they don't have that shell as a vulnerable road user to protect them? So the safer vehicles piece is an area that I think we're really trying to ramp up and do more, especially for those vulnerable road users. The third one, safer speeds, is an area that we're working on in partnership with Federal Highways to assess whether or not the safe speed is something that cities and municipalities really do have the control over. So that when people are crossing and sharing the roadway, what does it mean if going by you at 40, 50 miles an hour when they should probably be going 25 or 30? So the safer speeds piece, we're also trying to work on educating the public. And what does that mean when taking more of a proactive approach to your own safety when you're interacting with other types of vehicles on the roadway? Safer speed. We've also got the post-crash care piece, and that is NHTSA's purview as well. We all house the Office of Emergency Medical Services, and NHTSA is working on kind of a comprehensive integrated approach for post-crash care. So not only training 911 communicators, but also improving care on the scene and making sure that, especially in rural areas, we can do a better job getting emergency support services to crash victims and to appropriate post-crash care when they are involved in a crash after the fact. So those are just a few of the areas on the safe system approach that NHTSA is directly responsible for. A few highlights, and this one I may move on to the next. Don't want to hold you up, and Carrie's got some fantastic content. But I did want to share that NHTSA has, as I mentioned, the vehicle program. We're also doing a lot of research and development, and we have a grant safety arm, and that's the one that I work very closely with the Utah Highway Safety Office and a number of other states in the area. We manage a portfolio of about $15 million in grants that go directly to the states, and that grant program is truly an opportunity to think about how we're going to be shaping occupant protection and impaired driving, pedestrian safety, motorcycle safety, any number of traffic safety behavioral programs are really funded in large part through those grants that Carrie Shop runs. I mentioned the Office of EMS, but we have a few others too. As you're forming your projects and thinking about transportation data sources, the National Center for Statistics and Analysis is NHTSA's principal office. We're looking at any sort of human, vehicle, environmental data sources. We're looking at injury mechanisms. We're looking at the research specific to different vehicle advancements. And all of, the quantification of all of these results is available to you online. And we're trying to get a little bit more timely in our data. We have the 3/4 of the last year available now. And it's showing that, well, it's about 0.5% lower than it was the previous year in 21. These early estimates are available for anybody who's thinking about vehicle safety data in a different way. NHTSA houses the Office of Consumer Information and, the Communications and Consumer Information, and some of you may know it as trafficsafetymarketing.gov. Has anyone visited that site before? If you have, it's a resource for consumer information, media, social media, on any number of behavioral and vehicle safety topics. So I just wanted to put that out there because I think it's a fantastic resource. If you're looking for timing, certain times of the year, you can promote pedestrian safety or bicycle safety or work zones, whatever it is that you're particularly interested in. I hope that there are resources on there available to you that are free, and welcome to blast those all over social media as you choose. The Office of Emergency Medical Services, there were just a few more things that I didn't mention already that I wanted to. NHTSA is also very involved in preparing the EMS workforce. Do we have any EMTs in the room that has worked with EMTs? We do a lot of training and continuing education resources for EMTs, rural EMTs, and a lot of this has to do with assessing the state of health for emergency medical services, seeing how we can just bolster the workforce, because so much of it is volunteer, especially in rural areas. How does NHTSA then, from a national perspective, think about giving resources to those agencies so that they can respond quickly and with the best form of treatment available? We were also very involved in COVID. We do a lot of like managing emerging diseases, for example. So the Office of EMS is very diverse in its program. And I think this is an area of traffic safety and safety in particular that everyone is as familiar with, but obviously touches all of us. I will wrap up with just one more slide. And I mentioned the grants are run through the Regional Operations and Program Delivery, which is my arm. There are 10 offices all over the country, and we've got 6 states that we serve here. I would just mention that we are truly a support service to Carrie and her partners, and that we work every day in close working relationship with you and the programs that you do. But the grant funds are directly issued so that she can do incredibly innovative things with it. And Utah is one of the strongest programs that we have in the region. The work that's being done here out of the Highway Safety Office is absolutely phenomenal. And we've been touting the programs here in Utah as a national model. Everything from your zero fatalities to a new crash reduction task force to the Together for Life program that you're doing to increase belt use in rural counties in Utah. Over and over and over, we're seeing these incredible programs come out of Utah that we use as a national model. 05, and now I'm sitting here, and I never would have guessed that I would have a chance to come and visit with you in a school planning, future development, and mobility and safety. It's incredible. I didn't know you were here, and last year when we found out about it, we were so excited to come and see you that I get emotional thinking about the fact that you are truly an incubator of incredible ideas right here in Utah, and we couldn't be luckier. Thank you for having me out for NHTSA, and I hope that at some point you'll be able to use these resources for the work that you're doing. And if there's something that's missing, please let me know, because that's exactly what we want to do is hear what you think is good, bad, and ugly, and make improvements to it. Thank you. Okay, Carrie.
Just give us an example of like the program that you've done that you're really excited about personally.
I don't want to steal your thunder because I think you're going to talk about that. I think the one thing that we've really shifted with NHTSA is as I mentioned, things that aren't in the traditional transportation safety space. So they're not the engineering projects necessarily that you used to think about. It's really, what programs can we look at grassroots level that are meaningful to people that live in the communities in which these are happening? So the crash reduction task force that Carrie will showcase is very much about grassroots and about what you're doing here. That is a statewide program that we're writing up this week for a national showcase. But I think that's the shift that we're seeing. It's not so much a blanket statewide campaign. It used to be a click it or ticket, or us driving is drunk driving. I think we need to have it. We're excited about projects that are 20 is plenty.
What is that?
There's a 20 is plenty speed program. I think it was out of Oregon. And projects that are very community focused that I think make incredible progress locally.
Here, it's a centerpiece of a recent policy initiative with the standard speed limit now in Salt Lake City.
Okay.
20 is plenty.
Okay. Local ordinances are passed. That's how we ended up getting, we don't have a primary belt law in any state. And local ordinances have been incredibly successful in other places where that's the only place we can get a belt law. So I'm saying I'm most excited right now about very local strategies that can be effective. That's how Together for Life started, which is your rural belt use program here, and it's grown by so many counties. Technology, that's the other thing I'm excited about. There's a tremendous amount in technology right now, and I'll let Carrie present, and then maybe I can get back to the technology piece, because I think this is really going to help solve a lot of our issues around equity, some of our issues around profiling. I just think the technology is in a place where we can neutralize that and really do some safety and data collection with it.
Do you have more questions?
Yes.
Is yours primarily an advisory agency when it comes to highway safety programs in the states? Or do you have some control over highway funds, vehicle design decisions? Like
That's
you
great.
control some of the things
Yes.
and insist that it incorporates some of the things that you're telling.
Yes. So we are the grant office that I mentioned is the grant funding arm, and all of our funds are administered to the state Department of Public Safety, Office of Highway Safety receives all of those grants. And that's why we work in concert with Carrie to develop programs and evaluate those. and just, continue to, grow the projects that you're doing with the grant funds you have. On the vehicle side, we do have a regulatory and rulemaking. That is where you might be thinking about the rulemaking we're doing with manufacturers and compliance and some of the penalties that just even made the news earlier this week. Those are assessed by our vehicle. Thank you for the few extra minutes.
No problem. I'm always glad that you're here with me, Gina, and thank you.
Slides.
I don't want to hang up on anyone.
Don't push that button.
Yeah. My office, we have a saying, we have an electronic grant system that people that are new, like, you're gonna set off anything. There is nothing that you cannot undo. It just may take us hours, but you, nothing that you can undo. So like I said, I'm Carrie Silcox. I'm the director of the Highway Safety Office. I've been director there for 4 years. Prior to that, I was deputy director, so I climbed up the ladder, so to speak. And the joke was the Highway Safety Office is part of the Department of Public Safety. We are often put in with the Highway Patrol. And we are a sister agency of the Highway Patrol. We are our own office, but we are an office of 17 people. So it can be understood why we get buried bottom. I think us and fire marshals are one of the fire marshals, maybe smaller than us, but not much. And we're the 2 smallest agencies, I believe, in the department. I kind of like to fly under the radar, so I'm fine with that. I was going to play this video and then we can't get the sound to work. So we can get the captions to work. Is that correct? So I'm going to ask that you all read it. It doesn't quite give you the same effect. But what Gina was talking about is with the rising trend with fatalities, my senior staff, we sat down and talked today and decided the trends were showing up across the board, and we were talking about what are we going to do? COVID, obviously, all the impacts of COVID played a part in it. It showed, it kind of, I don't know the right word to put it. When you talk about the cream rising to the top in a positive way, well, the cream rose to the top in a negative way. It seemed like that our aggressive drivers and all that kind of came out of the woodwork where everybody went back in. So we are still trying to figure that out, all of the whys, but we were trying to figure out what are we going to do about it. So we decided this crash reduction task force, and it was back to the basics, back to grassroots. We do partner with UDOT on the zero fatalities. We are still an active, in fact, I'm on the executive board, but zero fatalities is more of a statewide, up here, high level, where we wanted to really get into the communities and talk to the communities and talk to the people about that person next to you in that vehicle is a human being. And I know, maybe it was because we all got used to Zoom, right? We all got used to just being in our homes during this impact of COVID time, that we forgot some of our the humanity side of things. I don't know. We're still trying to figure that out. But our goal was to remind people that the person walking down the street, the person on the bike, person in some sort of shared mobility, some ride share, some vehicle of some type, is someone's mother and someone's brother, someone's sister. So aggressive driving, you're impacting someone's family. Speeding, you're impacting someone's family. it comes down to that. And so we started out with this video that we just kind of blanketed our local agencies with. Again, so much better.
Here in Utah, our shared sense of community is what makes us special. We look out for others. We work for common goals. And we take pride in prioritizing the greater work. Here in Utah, our shared sense of community is what makes us special. We look out for others. We work for common goals. And we take pride in prioritizing the greater good. Our love for others inspires us to do what is right. We do these things because we care for each other. Drive safe, Utah. It's for all of us.
People smoking here, or at least one person can.
No, how do I get back? Sorry, it's waiting.
Oh,
You have got some serious anger issues.
I mean, could you imagine if an employee walked up to a boss or a manager and said, hey, I just need you to know something. You micromanage everything that we do as a team. Happy Tuesday. Like, nobody's gonna say that. Like, employees just, they don't say that. There's no incentive to say that. So instead, what do? They just
Here in
leave
Utah,
3 months later.
our shared
They
sense
leave
of
the
community
organization.
is what
And then
makes
it leaves
us
the manager
special.
scratching their heads going,
We look out.
oh, we never saw it coming. No, nobody wants to work these days. Maybe the question is, maybe they just don't want to work for you.
So,
But again, that was the hope that
I'm gonna
this
ask you
book
some
would
questions.
close the gap, that would help maybe a manager and an
Someone know
employee
what the
to go,
number
okay, you know what, maybe there's some
322
things I'm not seeing. Maybe my perspective is a little different than the reality of what my people experience.
Very good. What year? Very good. Okay. What does the number 18,220 represent? Nope. And just a hint, we call crashes not accidents, but it's injury crashes in 2022. All right, 61,406. Crashes, okay.
But wait, you call it a crash, not an accident, because what does that have to do with the blame that you're placing or not placing? Is that what it is?
Right. A crash accident kind of denotes that it just kind of happened out of the blue, or a crash.
Oh my God, I crashed into you.
Yeah, right. Okay, so 33%. Remember that number, 33%. We know what that would represent. Those are 33% of pedestrian fatalities. 33% was the percentage of pedestrian fatalities in 2022. Out of that number of 322. All right, 21%. 21% is the number of, or the percentage of crashes attributed to following too close. That can be either being distracted, aggressive, speeding, any of those kind of things play into following too close. Think of your own driving habits while I'm saying this. 5 o'clock, 5, 0, 5, whatever the, and then 0, 0. 5 o'clock.
Time for accidents, crashes.
Right, daily. And 0.14. Tricky one, because I haven't talked about this. 0.14 is the average BAC, state of Utah. Keep in mind that our per se limit is 0.05. Flat out. So
That's average.
when there's, yeah, either a crash, no, just a DUI, anything that's coming, because we have a partnership with our Talks Lab, where, and I'll talk about this later, but yeah, and it's for the last 2 years, it is stuck at 14% or 0.14.
But that was like the entire population, the average.
Yeah.
I can't say, we only started gathering this information in 21, so I don't know that. The highest BAC that we have in 21, and I don't remember at 22, but 21 I do remember it's 0.41. So any of you that do a lot of drinking out there, calculate that in your head.
That's average. So that means there's people above. It's like they're still.
And mind you, yes, these are either DUIs, fatal crashes, whatever. So these are traffic related. So at some point they were sitting in a vehicle when the sample was taken. So, yeah. So the Utah Highway Safety Office, our mission. Okay, our mission is to save lives by changing behavior so everyone on Utah's roadways is driving safe. Our vision is to create a culture where roadway users take responsibility for their safety and safety of others. So we have this plan and this idea that we want everyone to just arrive where they need to be safely. So we want to create the culture where everyone takes a part of that. We have some law enforcement partners that have actually said in the last couple of years that they cannot arrest themselves or arrest out of this trend in increasing crashes. It's going to take our communities stepping up and being compliant and helping each other and realizing that the person next to them is another human being in that vehicle. That's kind of where we went with that. So we're going to create this culture. Now I remember I came here last week. I don't know if you knew I was sitting in the back. And I remember you guys talking about speeding. And, you know, you guys were raising hands, and no, I didn't remember who rose what hand. But I do remember some of the questions, and one of the comments that you were asking who has driven 90, 70, 90 on I-15. I remember one of the comments came that someone, when the question about 90 miles an hour on I-15, it didn't matter because there weren't people there. Because the topic was pedestrian, right? But what came to my mind was, well, yes, there were people there. They were in the vehicles next to you. So what we're trying to, in our office, when we work on these programs, is to express that the decisions and the actions of whatever is done on the roadway impacts other people. It either impacts people financially or their families due to tragic loss or timing. How many of you have been stuck on I-15 or I-80 for hours because someone made whatever decision? And then at a task force meeting, someone made the comment out in rural Utah. So sure, all those roads out there that you can just open it up. And trust me, that just sounds fun to me. But think of this. You're out on this highway and there's no one out there, and just the idea of just, I can just open it up and go fast because no one is out here with me. And I won't impact anyone. Is that a true statement? No, because obviously if you were in a crash, you would impact whoever, your loved ones or whatever. But even just a simple, if you're running out the road or your tire pops or whatever, and you try to correct and nothing physically happens to you, But what happens now that you're this way across the road and traffic can't move? And it takes hours to get a tow truck out. Police have to come out, all that. So now you're tying up traffic. So it does impact, right? So what we do in our office is, I'm gonna speed this up. So what we do in our office is we address different problem areas. And I have program managers in each of these areas. Occupant protection, which is your seat belts. Impaired driving, we talked about. Vulnerable roadway users, it's your pedestrian, your bicycle, motorcycle, scooter, any of those rolling, walking type functions. Distracted and aggressive is speeding. Aggressive is often speeding is couched in with aggressive. Rural traffic and mature drivers. Here's a fun fact. In 2034, do you know that the mature drivers 65 and over will the mature people, the census of mature 65 and older will outdo everyone else in the state of Utah. Estimated.
Not an everyday.
Yep. It'll be the first time in history that flips upside down. So as you guys are doing planning, that's something to know and something to really look at. The populations that you're doing planning for is the mature driver or the mature walker, the mature whatever is going to become the thing in the future, and doing some planning around that. We're already having to amp that up in my own office as looking at mature drivers. And then data-driven approach. That's how we have to work with Gina to get our own grant, is that we have to, it's making strategic decisions based on data analysis and evaluation. And that's what we all do on a daily basis in my office. We use programs, messaging, media outreach, observational studies, focus groups, and quantitative research. We just had a focus group for Bike and Pet. And we pay a media group to bring in people that will just answer questions. And that was an interesting group, let me tell you, but I'm waiting for the final information on that. Just quickly, we get our funding through NHTSA. The one thing I really wanted to talk to you about, and Gina touched on this, is our work with the local communities. And as you guys are working on planning and projects, this is where I would stress that you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. And that's working with coalitions, working with some of these bike coalitions, pedestrian coalitions, or whatever coalition is in that group or project area that you're working with. Right now, we have county rural seat coalitions across 9 counties. Our program manager in the office, she's done some studies about where our seatbelt problems are across the state in rural. You figure you have 6 urban, and we've gotten a discussion of where's urban and rural in Utah. That's changing. So roughly 6 urban counties, the rest are rural. So that's our biggest problem, getting people to buckle up. I always hate to say this in big groups, but it's our males in pickup trucks and in rural. So I am really not picking on that. It's just that that's showing. Does that mean females don't buckle up? No. It's the majority. That's where the statistics are showing the biggest issue is with our males in rural and pickup trucks. So Carrie, our program manager, started these rural county coalitions. The coalitions are made up of the counties. The coalitions are made up of the schools, the county health departments, the mayor's office, police departments, the sheriff, EMS is involved, the hospitals are involved. Anyone that has anything to do with transportation and safety. So going back to what you guys are doing with your projects, look at who would touch your project. And I would dare say it would, involving them in the conversation now would provide an easier route to what you're trying to solve, the problem you're trying to solve. Other coalitions we have across the state, we have a seatbelt advisory committee. We have an impaired driving coalition advisory group, not a coalition, advisory group that actually involves some of the legislators and rural and urban, so that it helps us stay up on top of the tricky laws. You all know we have tricky alcohol laws here in Utah, so it helps us stay apprised of them. But also working with our community councils in any of these, reaching out and finding out what is going on at a community level and what are the problems they're seeing, and then you can bring in what your project is and work together, and they may come up with something like, have you tried this? We also have multi-agency task force, and this is just law enforcement specific, but we have 4 of them across the Wasatch Front. We have one in Weaver Davis. Sorry, we have Weaver Davis, Salt Lake, and Utah combined. We have 3. And it's a meeting where we go and meet with law enforcement on a monthly basis in these areas, and we get to, it's an opportunity for us to listen to them and to understand what issues they're seeing, the challenges they're seeing. Law enforcement, they're faced with big challenges right now. So it's an opportunity for us to provide some training and some assistance as much as we can provide. And then there's just other statewide stakeholders. You talked about the 20 is plenty. I know there's a Sweet Street group. There's Bike Utah. Southern Utah has some bike coalitions. There's groups all over out there, just bringing them into the conversation. Again, one of our roles with local law enforcement is we do, through our federal funds, we are able to provide overtime shifts to law enforcement and for impaired driving, the checkpoints, the saturation points. So, and those are data driven. We find where we can see where the citation data takes us, the crash data takes us as to where DUIs are more. So you guys heard about wrong way, all our wrong ways that we've had. We're trying to focus in on, and unfortunately those are just sporadic across I-15. So there really isn't just one place that those are happening, but we're trying to zero in on where those are at so that we can take the arterial roads and maybe do some checkpoints and catch them before they get onto I-15.
So we're getting down to the last 5 minutes here, and so I'm wondering if you can take a question or two.
Yeah.
And I'll lead off.
Yeah.
Because you were here last week, and last week we had a planner from Salt Lake City, a transportation planner, who works on pedestrian and bicycle planning. And one of his points had to do with the interaction between behavioral responses to design cues. So as I was saying, we now have the standard speed limit for local streets in Salt Lake City is 20 miles an hour. So for those people who drive, how many have had challenges keeping at 20? It's hard to stay at 20, isn't it? And I noticed this when I first moved here because there's a school zone. School zones have always been 20. And there's a school zone for Hawthorne Elementary on 700 East at 17th South. And when that sign is flashing, you're supposed to go 20 miles an hour on 700 East. And the width of the right of way, it's just designed for high speed travel. How are we going to achieve, behavioral change without changes in design?
That's a good question, because I'm not in the infrastructure world, but behavioral, again, it's just a good question, because that's the question we ask every day is, how are we going to do this?
Yeah,
Automatic transmission is really hard.
it's true. It's true.
Right?
But if you keep it in first or second gear in a manual, you can do it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, the vehicles do, the different messaging we're getting through the vehicle manufacturers that has come up in a lot of conferences I've attended.
So like it just said that all this sounds like no fun. So I have a question. I live in Moab now, so I do a lot of long distance rural driving, like I-70 and then down to Vegas to LA. So I have two questions. Did anything change when you made it 85 to 80, the speed limit change? I noticed. The other thing is in Germany on the Autobahn, there's no speed limit. Like, have you compared that? I mean, are the results that different?
I haven't compared the Autobahns, no. Has things changed? I don't recall it being 85.
Yeah, it was. I could fly down to Vegas 85 and LA.
I know people are going 120, 105. Our tickets, but the patrol it's up to 6,000, 6,300 or something like that this year. For some
Like in
tickets over
Germany,
100.
like in the city, sure, you go slow, but people like freedom, they don't live, and you have a high-powered sports car on a highway. You just want to drive.
I get that.
When you're talking about making these cultural changes, I mean, those take a lot of time. So how do you measure your performance and your success with that?
That is another good question. So how do you measure performance? We are actually redoing our performance measures as we speak. And we do a lot of surveys. And so on one of those pages, with the coalitions, she does a lot of, we're required to do an annual seatbelt survey. So that kind of helps that. So it's an observed seatbelt survey. So she has once a year, people that go out across the state at specific times and count people, stand on corners literally and count people wearing, and then it's all tabulated. We have Dr. Cook up here at the U do a report for us. So those kind of things provide evaluation. Oftentimes we utilize Dr. Cook again to do some studies for us, utilizing the information we have and some of the studies he has to see how things are changing. He has access to hospital data. So we also incorporate hospital data. Because we're partnering with Zero, they do a lot of surveys with the public. So we get attitude changes. And that's how we do a lot of them.
So we've got a lot of people on Zoom. I know somebody has a question. Why don't you just pipe up?
Gonna segue to that. This is an interesting one on driving behavior. Where does driver retesting fit into the discussion of increasing roadway safety?
I would, I'd kind of like to see that. There's actually some talk about doing that, but I don't know how far. That's a legislative move. So I can't say, yes, let's do that, because that's even out of my division, but that is a legislative move. And that's where we're going back to this community effort that we're doing. One of our focuses is actually to do like a traffic tip Tuesday and remind the adult public through social media You know, you need to do 3 seconds. Following this. Did you know, which is for motorcycles, 2 seconds. Cars. Did you know that you need to use your blinker? This is how you merge. This is how you do this. This is how you do that. So we're gonna actually do some social media that actually talks about basic driving behaviors and things straight out of the driver manual. We can't force the retesting, but we can want that manual all we want. Okay.
Yeah, I just have sort of going back to that, the intersection of maybe design and statistics and the idea of cultural change. Seems like the idea of changing cultures is measuring for a change in values or general ethic, but getting that to show up in data is very tricky. And so I'm wondering if you guys have, it's nice to remind people to care about other people. No harm in that. But are there more concrete incentives that your firm is offering to affect personal behavior as part of these initiatives, rather than just reminding people to be nice to each other?
We're still working.
Yeah.
This program has only been up for a year. Yeah. If you all have ideas, that is the eternal question. So
it seems like what we talked about last week with design, like changing people's values is one thing, changing behavior is another. And I wonder if when we ask people to change their culture, if we end up just almost blaming for a lack in innovative design.
And I don't want to get in, I don't want to sound like I am doing that, because I'm not. It's just
Sure.
This is where we're at, and it's just the culture we're in. One of the things too I find interesting is Utah's census from 2010 to 2020. And I'm sure you guys have heard this. We've increased our population 350,000 people. So you figure we've got all these cultures coming in, right? So we've got to also take into account diversity in inclusion, inequity, and all that. So bringing all that in, and you're talking about designs for streets and stuff. As you're designing your streets, as I was listening to him last week, and he was talking about, the narrow the streets for pedestrian safety. I agree with that, but at the same time, as you're putting trees down the street, are you now creating a problem for vision, like pedestrians? So there's a balance, right? So people coming out onto the road. So just as you're doing your planning, you just need to kind of look at all the users. Kids, they don't always find that crosswalk. We were talking about that in a meeting today. And do you all know the difference between all the crosswalks? And, there's the crosswalks with the zebra lines, there's the crosswalks, no lines, there's different rules for all of those. So things like that, public doesn't know those, but that's what we're trying to do, teach them. But, so as you're doing your designing, and I like the idea of traffic calming, because that is where changes are going to occur. Roundabouts, I do like those, because a lot of our intersection crashes are through left turning lanes, especially motorcycles. Left turns and right turns. Pedestrians are right turns. So and we're still looking for those answers. A lot of our staff meetings are just asking these same questions that you guys are asking me. There isn't a magical.
So the Department of the UDOT is a separate agency. You are a separate agency, but you work together.
Yes.
So how is that relationship with UDOT? State standards, this is the state road, it has certain, standards that it has to meet, but those are not great for safety. How do you change with your partner?
We have a lot of meetings. We are actually, and I say that and we all chuckle, but we are actually known across several states for our great collaboration. There's not a lot of states outside of here or outside of our region, actually, that work together as closely as DPS and UDOT. And then you bring in the Board of Education for teen driver issues and Department of Health for other issues. So if there was something to come up that I really questioned the UDOT was doing, or vice versa, we pick up the phone and we have a meeting and we talk about it. So.
Well, I want to thank Carrie and Gina for being with us tonight. Really appreciate the presentation.
Yep.
Great information. Thank you so much. We're going to take forward your ideas and see what we can do with them. Okay, so let's take our break. 10 minutes is our normal break. I have 3 after, so let's come back at 7:13 and we'll have a little preamble before we break up into our groups. So we can talk a little bit about where we are with our process and where we're going. So break well.
Email both of you. Thank you. It's not West Valley High, but yes, they are near a railroad.
West, so all.
It's just called West High. It's actually. I would have gone. Forget that. It is. They're like 400. There are other avenues. So bigger picture. Heidi. My mom. It's the yard. Why you this is different. Thank you. My name is Vaishali. If you get an email from me, you'll know who. Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's easier to just like. Move it.
Oh, okay. That's.
Seriously. So do we have our Zoom portion of the class? Because we keep getting these messages here that Zoom ended unexpectedly. Can you guys see us, hear us? No? Oh,
I can hear you.
you can hear us. Okay, great. We can hear you too. All right, so we're gonna do what we did last week and break up into groups according to our interest areas. And what I did this week is I sent all emails. I hope that was okay. Asking that whether I had your group membership correct, but also to give you some targets to shoot for. So by this time next week, what I'm hoping we can have is a list of your project titles, your subject, the things that you're actually going to propose. What we're interested in is having you narrow down your interests. In some cases, you've already done that. I know there's a group out there that is working on particular intersections and the design of crosswalks and so forth, and that's great. But for others, it's time to try to bring the focus down. What you're looking for is something that a decision maker can say yes to. You want to propose some sort of idea, whether it's a policy or a capital improvement, a facility that someone who is in a position of authority, a decision maker, can say yes to. And if your idea is a good idea, but it's not specific enough, that's going to be a little bit more difficult. So your task is to get it narrowed down. And the second thing you need to do is tie it to a need. What is your idea responding to? So what I thought I'd do is show a couple of slides here. And we were talking about this last time, about how you need to kind of lead with a need. If you are presenting an idea for a new policy or a new project to a decision maker, you need to first tell them why it's important. Why do we need this? Decision makers are in the position of fixing things that are broken, taking advantage of opportunities as they're presented. If everything's working just fine, as the saying says, if it's not broken, why fix it, right? So the first thing that someone who's presenting a project idea needs to do is to get the slides to work. There we go. Is to provide a lead-in. What is the issue? What is the problem? What is the opportunity? Why should a decision maker spend any time listening to your idea? If there's not a problem, there is no need for a solution. The writers of decision-making theory borrow heavily from narrative theory, and the ideas that they bring in are the ideas of how someone tells a story to a decision maker or a decision-making body. It almost always starts with, there's a problem. Things are dire. People are suffering. It's an emergency. You've got to do something quick before people get hurt. It's a little overly dramatic, but the whole notion is that if you can easily and effectively articulate that there is some sort of gap, and it might be an opportunity gap, it might not be a problem, so I don't want to make this sound like it always has to be a problem, but if there is some sort of gap, something that's missing in a community, our decision makers, our leaders want to respond to that. And they appreciate the wisdom or the kind of the observations that the people, their constituents have to offer to them to try to solve that problem, to respond to that gap. One of the things I encourage you to think about as you are thinking about your idea in your project is to think about using certainly visual information, but even video information. If one of the things that you're focusing on is the documentation of a problematic intersection or a problematic pedestrian crossing, there's probably a good opportunity to take video information that could illustrate that. Where does the issue come from? What's its source? What do we know what the causes are that are creating this problem, or what is contributing to it? Does it have a long history? Has it always been this way, or is it something that's arisen recently? I know that there's been at least one person here is interested in the safety of pedestrian crossings near West High School. Has the operation or the design of 300 West changed recently, or the way that the school interacts with that facility changed? I know there's a lot of construction happening on 600 North. Is that affecting what's happening with the safety around West High School? Is there a way to document that? And, you know, providing statistical information is powerful and can be very effective. I think providing visual information is just as powerful. And a good 5-second video showing someone trying to cross the street at a dangerous intersection can probably do as good a job as any demonstrating the need of something. And then Why is it important? Why do we care? What's at stake? Are people suffering because of it? Or not getting something that they value? And who are these people? Can you tell a story about one? Make it personal. We had a president in the 1980s, Ronald Reagan, who perfected the use of anecdote to get a point across. He was a great storyteller. And not all of the stories were backed by, deep levels of statistical data, but he was very effective in showing how you could use a story to try to illustrate a point. And then what are the solutions? So we're moving from a need, either a problem or a missed opportunity, articulation of why that's important, what is being valued, or the values that are implicated in that need. And then what are the solutions? How do you respond to it? And what are the advantages of different kinds of solutions? Are there alternatives? Can you do it this way or that way or a third way? What are the pros and cons of each of those solutions? Which one is the best? Why is it the best? Can you show examples and photos or designs or drawings that would illustrate those solutions? And then make the connection. How will opting for one of those solutions, perhaps the best solution, actually resolve the issue, take advantage of the opportunity, solve the problem? How can you tie that solution, again, to a story about someone who may have suffered because of the lack of a solution in the past? And then you always close out with, thank you very much. I appreciate your considerations. So that's how you present a project to a decision maker, and you do it in 5 minutes because that's usually all they give you. So definition of a need, an articulation of why that's important, a recounting or a presentation of possible solutions to meet that need, and which one of those is the best option, the one that you would recommend, how it would solve that need, and then they close. And that's what we're looking for with these projects. So what I'd like you to do, if you haven't done it already, is tonight with your groups to talk about need and the specific project idea that you want to pursue. And I asked about this in my emails to you this week, whether you want to pursue that project idea by yourself or in collaboration with people in your group or other students in the class. Collaboration is great. It doesn't work for everyone. And some people they have a very clear idea of what they want to work on and they'd like to do it and that's fine. You're not required to do that. One of the things that we probably will do when it gets closer to presentation time for your projects is if we have a cluster of individual projects that are all kind of based on similar articulations of needs, we might cluster those in the presentation so that your group present what the need is and then have individual projects go in there. We'll figure that out as we go. So any questions about any of this? It makes sense. Great. Tonight we're going to have 3 groups, as I said, in here, and 5 groups in the other room. So the homeless services group is here. Bicycle facilities 1, which is Rebecca and Dave and Noel and Lucas and Megan are here. And over here it's the Canyon group, it's Emily, and everybody else is on Zoom. And then the rest of y'all are off in the other room. And I think, Matt, you're in the other room, so. Let's go there.
Yeah, a couple groups devoted.